Welcome back to the EU LCS Summer Playoffs. Fnatic are up 1-0 in tonight's series as they look to secure their spot in the final. And guys, what a 1-0 it was. Team fights left, team fights right, and in the end, Fnatic won.
Yes, yes, they did.
That's a nice summary.
And they did it pretty convincingly towards the second half of the game. But the first half definitely looked a little shaky at times. Yes, they got a big advantage up towards the top side of the map due to some pretty good counter ganks against Maxlore. However, they tried to force a lot of plays that they honestly didn't need to force. And that could have given a big opportunity for Misfits to regain. Why, they did regain a big advantage in the other game.
But if you look back at the draft, some problems for Misfits were the fact that one, there was a Skarner that got super fed and they were forced to build early QSS, made it hard for them to team fight. And the second thing, it was hard for them to camp a bot lane because this Tristana was sitting there. I want to see what they change. I don't think banning Pyke like they did in Game 1 is necessary. I would remove that personally and instead ban either a Skarner or a Tristana.
Same bans from Fnatic and from Misfits up to now. As you state, Pyke was the third ban for Misfits in this first phase. Instead, going to be the Skarner that they struggled with so much.
You know, I think they're going to first pick the Pyke, mate.
I mean, if they do that, Fnatic will not win the draft. That's just pure comfort for Hylissang. Sure, that's great, but that's not what you need.
They're being sensible.
I like this because Fnatic knows that the way for Misfits to win is that they can kill the Fnatic bot lane.
Yes.
And it's much easier to kill the Pyke than it is to kill the Braum here. Kalista Alistar is still a fine choice. Give me a different jungler. I don't want Ivern again. I want more early game aggression, something you can really do something with early in terms of ganking. And then I need a roaming mid from Sencux.
I would say Gragas, however, I do feel that Braum can be a really effective pick thanks to his shield and mitigating a lot of the Gragas ulti plays that Maxlore did have a fantastic job of making last week in the quarterfinal, but Fnatic could look to prioritize it themselves. Things like the Trundle are still available, but it looks like the draft is going to be very similar as Fnatic right now hovering over there. A number of options for Bwipo.
And looking at it from the outside, you say you've got Braum Tristana in the bottom lane for Fnatic. That worked so well for them in the last game.
Yep.
Kalista Alistar did not have the effect they would have wanted it to. So we are really looking towards where Maxlore goes with that jungler. You need something strong. And Fnatic here looking for their final pick in this first phase. Sion, a very strong pick to go for early on.
Small history lesson based on some of the hovers from Caps. The Wukong he used against Misfits, and the Kayn he actually played mid lane also against Misfits in the past. The one time we got to see the Shadow Assassin Kayn and he destroyed Hansama with it. So taunting the team, but Sion of course being locked in here. We have to look towards Bwipo with that. So you can still go for your top lane choice here if you are Alphari. It was the Cho'Gath in the last game. And they're just going to keep it standard. Okay, Maokai instead, still tank.
Yeah, they a little bit more engage. Doesn't win lane, but I guess against the Sion, who's typically considered pretty good into most tanks.
You just triggered Vizichachi at home. It's like, oh, you win lane on Maokai.
Especially against champions like, nah, the greatest matchup. But we'll see how Alphari does. He didn't have the best game one. A lot of that was down to the early playmaking that didn't quite go in Misfits' favor. This time around, we do still have junglers left up and available. Cassio going to be taken off the board. And last time, I do believe that it was the LeBlanc that was banned and Aurelia, yes. So perhaps Misfits will look to prioritize Aurelia themselves. It was something that Sencux played in the first half of the split a lot.
Yeah, it's true, but for me, if you want a hardcore snow bot lane against Tristana Braum, you tend to need more than just your jungler down there.
I agree.
And then again, I'm not looking at things that just stays mid from Sencux.
So Aurelion Soul, Twisted Fate, two real possibilities.
Galio, like almost Talia maybe, but that will probably be unlikely against Caps. If you can't blind pick it, then you're gonna get completely destroyed in the mid lane.
So I mean, LeBlanc, funnily enough, is another one. And if you think back to a year ago and this was the Power of Evil Misfits, then you could have considered that.
Oh, the Bandit TF.
With the Rise ban coming out now for Misfits, I wonder if Sencux still's confident to play that kind of roaming style mid in LeBlanc. But it's not something that we would typically see from the Misfits mid lane.
In terms of junglers, things like Trundle is still available.
Oh, okay, so mid lane Lulu.
Okay.
Mid lane Lulu.
Interesting.
It's supportive. Yeah. It puts a lot of eggs in the Kalista basket here because I'm not seeing much damage on the rest of that composition at all.
If he can push and leave, it can still go bot lane and make something happen. It's not a pure roaming pick, but yeah, it is once again, hello Kalista, please carry. And in order for Kalista to properly deal with these big front lines, she needs to get ahead. Otherwise, this is going to be double damage dealer on the side of Fnatic, doing it better and faster than what Hansama can do. But there's a lot of protection. It's a massive front line. It does tell me we probably get a damage dealer in the jungle from Maxlore.
What are you thinking of for that damage to do in the jungle? Because I heard you tail off at the end there, Deficio. I want to know where we think Misfits are going to go.
I mean, we had Graves yesterday. Kindred has been another choice we have seen still in terms of if you want like damage from the jungle coming in. Gragas, however, is already there to try and use his ulti against
Caps and Corki.
Okay.
Something we haven't seen him play for a while. You talked about roaming mid lane champions. Once he gets the package, Corki can be pretty effective at utilizing pressure onto either side. But again, kind of standard draft from Fnatic. They have scaling on their side, good mid to late game spike, and I feel like that they can go much more towards those team fights as well.
All right, so it's Kindred or Graves really from the two that we mentioned here in terms of, you know, being able to deal damage from the jungle. When you have Lulu mid with the Kalista, you needed something here. But the thing is for Fnatic, if nothing happens in this game for 25 minutes, they just go, yeah, free win, we got it. Like, this is perfect. Corki scaling is nuts. And when we had supportive mid laners in the past, Corki was one of the picks people liked against it because you don't punish it hard enough. Yeah, you just free farm. And Corki's late game, because he can deal consistent damage, the shielding is just not enough to stop him from carrying.
It just surprises me that Misfits are going for this all in on effectively hyper hand slammer. They're just building comps. They did it with Ivern in game 1 to very much protect him. They kind of synergized that with the Orianna too. Now we have the Lulu. Kindred ultimate is pretty good, but at the same time, Gragas has often been considered a pretty solid pick because he can use his ulti to knock out people from the Kindred ult. But again, it's all about early game playmaking bot, which they failed to do in game 1. Misfits, they need to find that success in game 2.
So let's see what Maxlore can do specifically in this game. Last game he played Ivern. He went top lane twice. That gave 4 kills over to Fnatic, and then we didn't see Maxlore for the rest of the game. And he's one of the most important players on this Misfits lineup. He needs to carry on this Kindred here. And yes, the ulti can be difficult against the Gragas, but everything else should be fine for him with the Kindred.
Now, as the teams load onto the Rift, let's head on over to Drakos and Fnatic's coach.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I am joined by Dylan Falco. Dylan, I got to know, very confident first win coming in from Fnatic. How's the team feeling on stage right now?
I think we had a insanely good week of practice this week, and we come in thinking that we're probably the favorites, so it feels really good. And kind of calms everyone down to win game 1 and that things are going smoothly.
All right, things looking good for Fnatic so far. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you very much, Drakos. We are back here on the desk.
And in the Rift.
And on the Rift. And I have an interesting little statistic for you guys.
It is.
Sencux has played Lulu mid once before this split.
He did.
It was against Fnatic.
It was.
When Misfits won.
And that was against the funnel comp, though.
It was against the funnel comp.
And that was also when Misfits invaded 5 members level 1 onto Fnatic's red buff, and that was one of the craziest level 1 shenanigans we've had in Europe.
It was incredibly fun.
Yes.
Caps has not played Corki this split.
Don't think Misfits is going to get the same kind of early advantage. You can see Corrupting Potion actually starting for Sencux. Something we've been seeing a lot more on mid lane mages. When you kind of take it into the inspiration tree, you have that extra bit of sustain, which is very much just wave clear, farm, stay alive, get those early items. You're expecting an early Ludens, and again, the focus just kind of falls down on towards the bottom lane for Misfits.
And if you're not right now abusing this in solo queue to just have a huge advantage in lane because of sustain with biscuits and Time Warp Tonic plus the Corruption Potion, go do it. It's really hard to lose lane.
It's really hard to lose lane. But, you know, Deficio, you talked a little bit about it. Maxlore will be the main one that we keep our eyes on. In game 1, he struggled to have much of an impact, and that was kind of surprising considering when we look back at his quarterfinal performance, he was very significant in the wins for the side of Misfits.
Exactly, and especially if you look in the middle, the K plus A at 15, like, so many kills happened for Misfits, and he was part of almost every single one of them. Like, it's rare you get these kind of stats. We didn't even die at 15 minutes in 3 games, but he showed up big time. He's on Kindred, he's on a carry. A lot of damage comes from him as well, next to Hansama. So we need a good start from Misfits' side. And once you hit that level 6 in the bottom lane, we know the tower dives with Alistar plus Kalista will be insane.
Because as much as Maxwell did have an incredible impact in quarterfinals, it was on tanky junglers. He played Gragas, Skarner, and Poppy. He didn't play these carry junglers. So we do need to keep our eyes exactly on how he's pathing, where he's going. Something you can never forget is the amount of experience that Fnatic just have as a roster. Misfits players, 115 playoff games. Fnatic, that is across their entire 6-man roster, so they do have an extra player in there, but 258, over double the amount of playoff games as the Misfits players.
Well, they do have quite the history, given the number of EU LCS titles that they do have, and perhaps with a win over Misfits, they can make their way to the finals in Madrid up against Schalke, but they have to get through Misfits first. Currently leading the series 1-0, and For Fnatic, again, it's very much about scaling. They don't need to force plays in the early game. Both the Corki and the Tristana are very strong at around 2-3 items. Cap's likely going to be rushing for something like the Trinity Force into the Stormrazor. And if we see a similar performance from game 1, Misfits with a bit of extra damage now from the jungle, maybe they can turn these fights around and then snowball. But the emphasis falls on Misfits to create these early game plays.
And this actually kind of reminds me of the Summer Split playoffs. It's obviously a slightly different Misfits lineup, but we had a Misfits team that surprised us in the playoffs. You know, they managed to actually beat Fnatic. They shut them down through the mid lane, and they went into a final against G2 Esports. And it was the same story where G2 would draft scaling, like Fnatic has been doing today, and Misfits had to try and find ways to win the early game, but they struggled to do it and they lost 3-0. We have to see if this is a repeat. The only thing that actually is kind of similarity is the fact that Youngbuck is on the side of Fnatic now. He was obviously on the side of G2, and when we look at the Fnatic way of playing the game with Rekkles, it is a lot about late game team fighting. It's how they will win against every single team in Europe if we just base it on the players and the carries they have. So can Misfits actually snowball early game properly against a scaling comp?
And against the caliber of players that Fnatic have, one of the things that we've said consistently throughout the regular season is just every member on this team is performing at an extremely high level. 3 members of the All-Pro team were from Fnatic. Now, Rekkles jumps in.
Hylissang uses him as a conduit. Mikyx looking for the knockback here. Concussive blows is going to land. There's the stun. Teleport coming in behind them, but Fnatic are going to answer with one of their own. Rekkles is done! And Summer gets burst blood, and here comes Alphari. Teleport cancelled by Bwipo. Incredible stuff for Misfits. They get their bot lane ahead.
It's so important. They didn't even need to gank the lane. It was Broxah walking into the lane from Fnatic. He thought to himself, oh, Kindred is just going to farm right now. I can try and get my Tristana lane ahead and stop this Misfits early game from actually getting any sort of snowball in their favor. But by him walking mid, we saw Rekkles jumping in. Braum then wants to jump to Rekkles, but the whole thing ended up being slightly delayed, and then Mikyx actually stays alive.
Hylissang trying to keep the minions around here. Doesn't need to be careful because he's going to die.
He tries to freeze the minion wave and gives away another kill. That's a 3-0-0 Han Summer 5 minutes into the game.
Who needs your jungler?
He's going up top lane now.
Don't need your jungler at all to gank the bottom lane. He can go up towards top instead. Now, last time we saw Maxlore gank this lane, it did not work out well for them. Bwipo got the 2v1. Can't connect with the decimating smash. Teleport coming in from Caps, trying to turn this one around if they can. But Bwipo is so low, he's done. Here comes Caps. Maxlore trying to dodge around. Dodges the phosphorus bomb. The knockback from Alphari as well. Caps is low. Broxah flashes in, gets one. Now Alphari's trying to keep Broxah underneath the tower. He'll get one in return. Caps isn't going to go for the full dive, and Alphari still pretty healthy underneath this tower.
Oh, Caps is still staying around, trying to hit him. Mikyx around the mid lane with Sencux.
Sencux very low on mana here. Mikyx just needs to be the bouncer for his mid laner because Hylissang is coming in. The knock up onto Mikyx. Sencux has the wild growth. He flashed in the wrong direction, and now Rekkles has been turned around on Vedius. The shield is not enough. Fnatic are falling apart, and Misfits are picking up the pieces.
This is the kind of early game lead that Misfits wanted in game 1. 6-1 is the kill score right now for Misfits. That's a 2,500 gold lead 6 minutes into the game, and the action's not over yet.
Knock up onto Bwipo. Here comes Maxlore. Bwipo has to flash away. Hylissang picks up the Unbreakable. They're going to try and turn it back around. Decimating Smash. Use Mikyx. Will be stunned up, but you just don't have the damage to get through an Alistar at this point.
Top lane!
There, Alphari trying to do what he can in the 2v1. Eventually, he will fall here. Caps just needs one last auto. Broxah will take it instead.
We're 6 minutes into the game. We have 8 kills already and a massive goal lead for Misfits. Hylissang will find Maxlore.
Hylissang, don't do it, Hylissang.
Oh!
Fnatic win the game, it's done.
That's how you carry a support.
That's the style points right there for Fnatic. A bit of redemption as they are still at a 2,000 gold deficit.
Yeah, bot lane turret also took a ton of damage while we had all the fights mid and top lane because Han Summer stayed while Rekkles went on that little weird adventure to mid.
Also, remember, we haven't had a replay yet. Good luck, observers, figuring out where to start in all that action, because it all kind of happened at once. And I feel like we have to go back to that bot lane play, where Rekkles jumped in. He felt that with Broxah, they could get a pretty easy kill, but really fast teleport from Alphari quickly turns it into a 3 versus 3, and all the attention went on to killing Mikyx, but they could not kill him fast enough. And while Han Summer was freely dishing out the damage, that enabled him to get that kill onto Rekkles, which kind of started the snowball.
And we were kind of talking about, okay, maybe you wait for level 6 on your Alistar and your Kalista before you start going for the big plays near the bottom lane, but they didn't have to because they got that huge advantage. Now Ansama is there with 6. It feels like any sort of setup they want to make around this lane should go heavily in their favor. We're just waiting for them to actually pull the trigger. There's TP on Bwipo very soon, however, to try and answer if Misfits are going hard in the bottom lane. Otherwise, Misfits can just grab this turret and do what they did last game, where they start pushing this bottom lane really far towards Fnatic's base.
So now we see Misfits with that bot lane lead. Bilgewater Cutlass already finished on Hansama. Bwipo is down here. He knows the triple dagger on Rekkles is not enough to face against Hansama and Mikyx.
And no TP from Alphari, so it's 4 members of Fnatic. We have Caps on his way with the package as well. It's a 5-man play.
Kindred's on his way as well, though. Has that
No package, but he's here.
No package.
They're going.
It's here! You know how you kill a team. You go when they can't engage together. 2v3. Misfits come out on top. Hylissang and Bwipo tried to come in, but they weren't able to make it. Here's the jump across the wall. The chase from Mikyx. Caps. Valkyrie's away. Now Bwipo and Hylissang and Rekkles are coming up. Mikyx not in the best of places. Can use the blast code to try and get himself away towards that mid lane. Caps can still chase. Meanwhile, in the top lane, Alphari is still pushing in. No teleport on him. Fnatic, they want to find something, but Mickey's the one to go in. Caps locked up, gets away. Here's Rekkles, jumps across the wall. Lamb's respite keeps them all alive, and now here's the team fight in the river. Bwipo's going to step forward, trying to be the man for the moment for Fnatic, but he cannot. He's going to connect. He's done. And once again, Misfits turn Fnatic's aggression against them.
Fnatic keep trying to force these fights. It's exactly like game 1, but this time, Misfits are snowballing things out of control. 3,000 gold lead in their favor. Hansama has 5 kills.
With 9 minutes in the game, that's a kill, more than a kill every 2 minutes at the moment for Hansama. Broxah,
okay.
no flash. Sencux there, Maxlore on the chase. Broxah's going to try and get away the ignite. Final shot! Goodbye, Gragas. 9-2 in favor of Misfits.
And listen, so much credit to Misfits for taking these fights and winning them this time around. But man, Fnatic, you have scaling.
Now,
you don't need to do this.
This ward in the river was clutch because Fnatic were coming for a 5-man dive, but Misfits responded perfectly. They immediately go towards the 2-man flank. They get themselves some quick kills, and then they go for the chase. But the fight's not even over yet, Deficio.
Nope, we're now gonna get Mikyx, who looks like he's caught out, but he actually gets back to his team. And now Fnatic are saying, okay, this Alistar's low, we can take him down, but there is a Kindred ulti.
There's the wild growth as well to buy more time. Mikyx's still not even level 6, and he just soaks up so much damage. Then Bwipo, rather than trying to run away, he actually walks back towards the team. He ends up splitting himself apart from Fnatic, and then they end up giving away another kill.
And sometimes we've talked about Fnatic being a team that is always on the aggressive, always hitting that go button, and they need a voice just to bring them back a step. They need someone like Soaz just to say, okay guys, take a step back. Bwipo and Caps have been very aggressive in this game, and it has not paid off for them yet. Fnatic are going to be able to get the top tower. They're going for Rift Herald as well. Misfits down towards the bottom side looking for a tier 2.
And again, it's not just one game they're doing this. We saw it last game, we saw it during the regular season. They keep forcing. But once you draft so much scaling on your side and the enemy team seems to have very simple win condition, which is get that AD carry ahead, you really don't have to do too many things on Fnatic, but they are looking for the plays. It has completely backfired. It's all on Misfits now to snowball this game.
Look at the mid lane. Look at all the people that are gathering around Caps and Sencux. Rekkles coming in from the top side of the river. Mikyx is coming in through the bot as Maxwell steals away some of the Caps. They don't want to force anything, though.
No vision. Yeah. Hylissang steps forward, spotted by the Sentinel. Hansama flash away from Hylissang. A great explosive cast. They're going to try and turn this one around with the Glacial Fissure. Sencux coming in from the side as well.
Ouch. That hurt.
Yeah, that tasted pretty purple.
Hey, we got Rekkles split pushing top lane right now. Bot lane, he's out, but this turret, it's probably going to drop if Misfits stays.
Alphari, he's going for the 1v1.
Yeah, Rekkles has jumped already with that explosive jump. Alphari, 1v1ing those minions.
Clutch.
Mid lane instead.
Yep.
This game has so much action. We have to roam for Misfits on the bottom side. It's Alistar plus Kindred coming. They will force Fnatic back, but there's a lot of damage onto the turret, and Misfits did not stay bot to take the tier 2 yet, but Hansama is there. He should be able to get it.
Yeah, we also see Hansama alone in the 1v1. We've got AD carries versus top laners on both sides of the map, but people from Misfits are roaming down towards the bottom lane. Now, will they look for a kill onto Bwipo? He does have the flash. I think they're just focused on the tower.
It's a tier 2 they are taking 12 minutes into the game. Mid lane, Fnatic are going to push up. They've got Rekkles and Broxah coming across from the side as well.
Yeah, right now Fnatic actually getting quite a lot out of this trade here because they weren't never going to win on the bottom side to stop Hansama. So the fact they can get a mid lane turret with the Rift Herald and then a second push is very nice for them to at least try and stay somewhat in this early game, but they're so far down, and Hansama should be able to walk into that next fight and just hard carry for his team.
Pace of the game has slowed down ever so slightly. It's been a whole 3 minutes since we last got a kill. It's just a monumental amount of time, but it gives us a moment to check on these AD carries. Hansama has the Blade of the Ruin King, the recurve bow, and the Berserker's Greaves completed. Rekkles only has the Greaves, double dagger, and a longsword.
And you can see that the Training Force has been completed, though, for Caps. Kind of shining light of the team who hasn't died yet and has hit a pretty solid spike. So if Fnatic want to go for skirmishes now, then maybe they'd be in a slightly better position. But it might be too little too late as Maxlore's completed his jungle item. Sencux is very close to reaching that level 11 point where that wild growth will be that much more impactful.
Exactly, and no one on Misfits needs to build a QSS this time around because they banned away that Skana that was so annoying for them in the last game. The Gragas from Broxah's side here wasn't so much the champion, just more the plays from Fnatic that ended up completely backfiring. They will, once again, though, be able to trade, get a turret on the bottom side, but they're a bit behind in the play. You see Hansama's already at the tier 2.
Yeah, Hansama just solo pushing towards that tier 2. We'll get a chunk of damage on that. Shouldn't be able to take it all the way down. Bwipo is going to have the unstoppable onslaught available for him, so we'll probably just run up towards this lane to stop the Kalista if needed.
Oh, he's just going to give it up,
against it. Tower's going to go. In the bottom lane, Caps has been engaged on, trying to Valkyrie away, doesn't have the package, Broxah on his way as well. Flash, Nature's Grasp, Maxwell flashes in as well, but Caps doesn't really have anywhere to go right now. Twisted Advance will be enough. Alphari gets the kill.
I think Fnatic actually thought more players were hiding in a brush near Hansama, seeing as they didn't want to rush in and try and stop him from taking the turret, and Caps stayed so far up in the bottom lane. But then you have multiple players actually walking out to just kill Caps, and he ends up looking a little bit like a fool.
15 minutes in, Fnatic are facing a 5,000 gold deficit. They're going to lose this mid tower pretty soon as well, unless they find some semblance of hope to defend it. And Misfits in such a strong spot.
Here comes Mikyx.
3,000 more gold on Hansama than on Rekkles, but Rekkles can still get a lot of damage down. Fate's Call used, Teleport coming in behind them as well. Here's Bwipo, has that unstoppable onslaught if he needs to join the fight. Teleport comes in, Caps joins it. Mikyx in that front line knocks up the Sion. You can see there's a lot of damage coming down here. Mikyx just gets into the lamb's rest, but Alphari's going to fall. He was just tanking up Rekkles for as long as possible. He will go down. Misfits still running away to the top side of this fight. Flash from Bwipo is available. There's the package in from Caps. Gets onto Maxlore, but Caps just about surviving off towards the side. Mikyx down. Fnatic find a good fight in the mid lane.
And Fnatic, they don't slow down. Even though they were at a 5,000 gold deficit, they continue to look for fights. Maxlore now being forced back as Fnatic continue the chase.
Great push here from Fnatic as well. They're using Rekkles in the mid lane to try and get the tower.
It's actually insane this is happening. I can't believe they just won a fight against Misfits. 5k gold down. Your AD carry has nothing. Their AD carry is really strong with 5 kills.
But I feel like it came off the back of poor decision-making from Misfits because they tried to dive this tower as Broxah had the stopwatch. This buys enough time for the TP to come in from Caps, so this ends up being a 5v4. And where can Alphari TP in? Away from the rest of the Misfits team. He gets isolated underneath the tower against 3 members, and it ends up just being like a 2v2 on the top side. The Caps is just winning for Fnatic.
Yeah, Misfits had so much time to actually just walk back through the mid lane after that initial play failed under the turret. But of course with Alphari ending up under the turret and then walking then into the Sion plus Caps, who's actually strong on this Corki, Fnatic win the fight. It's still a 3k gold lead for Misfits, almost 4k at this point. Now Rageblade is here. It was 5, now it's 4. It's still enough, Vedius.
But I'm just saying,
have Rageblade.
Is it enough though?
Yes, it has to be. Otherwise it's a 3-0.
I agree with you. If Misfits do not win from this position, I totally think that Fnatic will just 3-0 it. And Misfits have to show us they can translate an early game lead into a win, because against G2 last week, their mid game wasn't as strong as it could have been.
They definitely slowed down a lot, and it feels like Misfits, not focused around the last fight, but just when we get further into the game and they have to play in all 3 lanes, they kind of don't coordinate between all 3 of them. It's all individual plays happening left and right. Now they're trying on the bottom side.
Bwipo, seeing if he can escape from this one. Hansama's just putting a lot of spears into the back of that Sion. And he is going to get taken out. Mid lane, the fight goes on. Hylissang dead. Bwipo not able to do anything in the bot lane with his passive. Alphari goes down in the mid lane as well.
3 people just died.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened in the mid lane.
Come on, play-by-play, get to it.
Like, the kill bot lane was easy. And then something happened in the mid lane.
Yeah, so Fnatic found themselves 1 kill, whereas Misfits found themselves 2. It was Alphari that ended up dropping 2 Caps, who finds his actually first kill of the game. but they ended up shutting down Hylissang as Misfits now set up for this mid-tier 1.
Obviously another fight there, yes. 1-for-1 in the mid lane, but doesn't
Did he
matter.
flash into a wall?
Hex flash.
Bottom side.
Hex flashed it.
Yeah.
One thing we
you
have to
do that
highlight,
sometimes.
guys, about the last fight that happened that Misfits actually lost. While they had the big goal lead, they were only sitting on a bow from Hansama, and when he actually went back, he got a Rage Blade.
Yeah.
So a lot of that gold was not spent in the
true.
last fight,
Very
and
true.
now they have that huge spike on the Kalista, and we get the big difference between the AD carries. They're running out of turrets to kill, however, so it's gonna soon be Infernal Drake into Baron focus, but you have Kalista, so that's not a problem for you.
And this was the period in time that you were talking about just a second ago, Deficio, where we often see Misfits slow down because the map is so open right now for both sides. And while Misfits do have the tower lead, sometimes when they're trying to play around the Baron or play around these neutral objectives or set up the side lanes, they don't seem as coordinated. And right now, they have their Kalista pushing out bot. They're likely setting up for the Infernal Drake that's about to spawn, but because they don't have pressure up top, they're now being split up again and they might lose that control.
Yeah, and this feels like the kind of game where it's almost impossible to fully slow it down just because Fnatic will then force a fight on you. They're not waiting, they're not sitting back doing nothing. It's less focused then on, oh, what is the perfect setup with, you know, the beautiful vision into fancy minion waves being stacked. It's more like, are we ready to fight? Can we win the fights? Do we have the mechanics? Do we have the synergy to 5-on-5 Fnatic at all times? It's how the games have been played out so far. This one's gone in favor of Misfits, but last one was in favor of Fnatic.
Misfits had to group up as 5 there. Bwipo had teleport, whereas Alphari didn't, so Bwipo got a little bit of time to chip away at that top lane tower, while Misfits did get the Infernal Drake for themselves. 45 seconds before Baron spawns, Misfits will want to get vision control around there. You can see they've got 6 control wards in their inventories.
So I do worry, Deficio, how early Misfits can actually force Baron, because you'd think that where they're 3-1-3 Kindred and 6-0-0 Kalista, you would take that Baron relatively quickly, but that's still a Trinity force with a BF sword onto Caps. He will likely have the package relatively soon, with Broxah on the Gragas and Bwipo on the Sion 2. In that enclosed space, that could be a big avenue for Fnatic to actually win a fight.
Yeah, I think the problem for me is lack of armor on Misfits' side. Especially because the tank is the guy who's sitting in a side lane, bot lane, with teleport. So no one can actually start the Baron and sit in front of the Baron for long enough to then be healthy for a fight. And that is something Fnatic knows, and they can use this to kind of force Misfits into choose between starting Baron or simply not doing anything other than looking for a pick. Luckily for Misfits, I think they have enough tools to just force the fight then. You don't actually have to start Baron, you get the vision in Baron area, and when Fnatic tries to check, you throw an Alistar in there, or you flash engage as Mikyx, and you just take the fight. And it's less about starting Baron then and forcing around, you know, can we kill it? And more about saying, hey, they have to check at some point, because they don't have vision.
Yeah.
And when they do, we fight.
Get the mid lane priority by pushing up this wave. Broxah and Caps trying to step forward if they can, but they can't get too far forward.
Yeah, because if we turn on the Fnatic vision, you will notice that they don't actually see anything in the river. And someone needs to check. So that's now your blue trinket gone. It's on cooldown. Once it gets killed, no one knows. And someone is going to poke the head in. Typically, it's the support. He's the one you sacrifice. Like, you go in there, and then you flame him when he face checks.
Well, Fnatic are going to do what they can.
They're actually going as a team. This is risky.
Isn't solo queue Deficio.
They're hiding in here.
Hylissang.
We've seen this before though, Deficio, and the last time Alistar and Mikyx did this.
Use the package, here's the Fate's Call. Maxwell coming in from the top side as well. Teleport used by Misfits. A superb collapse onto Caps. Hansama just about survives.
And that's exactly what we just said. Don't start the Baron. No need to take the damage. Just wait until they have to walk into that river to figure out what's going on. And then you find the engaged. Mid laner is now gone. Alphari is here. He can actually stand in front of the Baron. And now you can set up a nice play.
Fast.
You got the spears. There's no way Broxah can steal this.
He's not even going to look for it. Fnatic are backed off. Misfits will secure the Baron. 22 minutes in, they lead by 6,000, almost 7,000 gold. Such a strong position for Misfits to be in.
And that was just a perfect play around the Baron. Exactly what we want to see from Misfits to make sure this series will go a lot further than just a 3-0.
And it's a big difference from the Hansama of last week as well, because we think back to him diving underneath the tier 2 tower against G2, trying to go for the hero play, ends up giving away his life. He tried multiple times with a big lead to create opportunities that ended up backfiring, but this time round, it worked out because he coordinated well with his team. Maxlore was moving up through the river, Alphari instantly teleports in, and while Caps almost gets the kill onto Hansama, overall it ends up being a Baron in favor of Misfits.
I really like the positioning in that bush from Hansama and Mikyx as well. You can see Caps just didn't expect him to be there. Now, 23 minutes in, Rekkles has finally got that second completed item. Hansama building up towards his third. Ardent Sensor complete on Sencux as well, just to continue to buff up Hansama on that AD carry. And you can never forget Maxlore. He has the Blade of the Ruined King alongside the upgraded Skirmisher Saber.
Yeah, and I was asking for like a roaming pick from Sencux. I didn't get it, but instead I got 4 or 5 kills for Hansama in the first 10 minutes. And it wasn't even about roaming or jungle ganks. It was just playing that 2v2 in the bottom lane. And then suddenly a jungler shows up and it all backfires for Fnatic. So in this game here now, this Lulu is going to be super, super good because the correct member is fed. And you now have everything you need to protect Hansama. If he dies in a fight, however, your damage is more or less gone.
Yes, and it's also really important to remember that things aren't completely over yet for Fnatic because the scaling option is still on their side. And the one thing that we did see Misfits sometimes struggle against versus G2 last week was trying to go for these final game sieges. Often Hansama would take just one too much poke, and then he ends up, it gives the opportunity for the enemy team to force an engage. And if Fnatic see that opportunity, they will not be afraid to force it. And now we see Mikyx taking a bit too much damage.
It's okay for the moment. He wasn't in the best of situations, but Misfits instead just want to go for this mid lane tower. Nature's Grasp used as well from Alphari, trying to get onto the back line if he can. Misfits will get the tower, the root on Bwipo. He's not in a good spot. Hylissang just about survives as well, but Hansama is incredibly low. Lamb's Respite used, just the healing here for Misfits. Have to look at those bombs coming out from Caps as well, because one big one hitting onto someone can just chop.
Oh, he went in!
Yeah, just turns it back onto Caps. He's done! And now Misfits can push forward. They know that Caps is dead. They can look for this inhibitor.
Fnatic, they wanted to go for the re-engage. Look at that control ward near the mid lane. Bwipo had TP and they wanted to create that flank, but he couldn't get back to base in time, and Misfits sprung way too early. Caps gets caught out of position, and now they're looking for their second inhibitor.
Yeah, Caps wanted to be the hero right there. If he could flash in, get a kill for his team, and then still get out, Fnatic could defend and actually make sure the Baron buff didn't do anything. But now they're losing this bot lane tier 1 as well.
Engage on towards Bwipo with the Twisted Advance. There's the inhibitor tower going down. Misfits will get the inhib as well. Rekkles sitting in a good position to do a lot of damage on the back of this fight. The level 13 Tristana is not something to be sniffed at, but Bwipo sniffed the wrong way. He's snuffed out by Misfits. Caps back alive. Misfits will just back away.
They don't want to overcommit to this. Do they have any ultimates left available? Maxlore is on cooldown. Alphari's is up soon.
Fate's Call is there. Fate's Call is there.
But I think they just need to disengage. Spend the gold that they've just picked up. No need to overcommit. Your Baron buff is about to run out. But Misfits secure themselves 2 inhibitors. Now they're very close to a 10,000 gold lead.
Very successful first Baron for the team. Not only how they set it up, but also how they use it. This is the first play where Alphari, they want to zone them off the turret, they want to kill the turret, and then they can take the fight after. They almost kill Hylissang, but actually makes a nice little play where he steps to the side, dodges the damage from Alphari. And Caps, man, he's just like, I want to get in there, I want to carry this.
But you can see that Bwipo, he's going back to base, he's setting up for the teleport play, and they just want to keep the poke down, but then he flashes in, tries to go for that kill onto Mikyx, instantly punished. Really good reactions there coming out from Misfits and Mikyx, and it enables them a kill and 2 inhibitors.
4,000 gold Baron power play. Only 25 minutes into this game, we have had 20 kills. Misfits, when they get first Baron, are always the winning team, apart from that one time.
And it always feels bad when you're a Gragas at 26 minutes into the game and your only other item is a Zhonya's Hourglass. One of the frontliners that you're relying on right now has definitely struggled so far in this game, and a lot of that comes off of the early playmaking that Maxlore has set up for his team.
This entire game all comes down to the first 10 minutes going so heavily in Misfits' favor. Just like it did for Fnatic with the first few ganks in the last one, so both teams are kind of trading. You know, wherever the jungler goes for the first gank, it just backfires. Don't do it. Don't be the first jungler to gank in this series.
Next game, we're just going to have a 40-minute nil.
No one will do anything.
Never go for a gank, but Misfits have that Baron up in just a couple of minutes' time as well, with double inhibitors down there, pushing in this top lane, looking to equalize this series against the reigning champions Fnatic.
And just by getting the double inhib on the first Baron, once again, just makes it impossible for you to not continue to pressure and actually close out the game, because you have all the tools you need. Typically, if teams can defend inhib turrets, for a long time they can keep scaling onto 3-4 items, but not in this game here. Misfits actually now taking a lot of damage.
Alphari's going to get stunned up here as well. Misfits have to do something about this because the Glacial Shroud, the Lamb's Respite, sorry, will keep him alive for the moment. Glacial Fissure was used by Hylissang as well, and Alphari has to back away, does have the teleport if he wants to rejoin his team.
Very surprised this happened. Caps was just bot lane killing the wave, and Misfits didn't really manage to step forward. Problem for them right now, if you look at the minimap, when this wave is crashing at the turret, the other two in mid and bot are not threatening the in-Nexus turrets. So they don't actually force Fnatic away. They can still sit here and defend.
But I don't think they care too much about being able to hit that inhibitor tower right now, largely because their whole goal is to maintain vision control around the top side of Fnatic's jungle, because with the Baron spawning in about a minute, they still have the inhibitors broken, but okay, they're just gonna hard commit.
Use the TP to try and hard commit to this, but the wave clear from Fnatic is very strong.
Yeah, I don't think they can. There is too much wave clear on the side of Fnatic. I think you just have to play towards the Baron.
Well, they did get a bit of damage on the Nexus turret this time around.
Not for that long though. Alphari still that frontline tank for Misfits. Against a Corki, against a Tristana, against an AP Gragas as well. Those waves are melting. Baron up in 20 seconds though, so as you say, Misfits have the vision control around it now.
Exactly, they know there can be no wards from Fnatic other than blue trinkets behind them now. They're forcing it though.
Going for it. Nature's Grass used. Mikyx uses the Hex Flash across the tower as well. Bwipo is the first target. Broxah knocks into Hans Summer, but Hans Summer just going to put the spears in the back of the Gragas. Good knock up onto Hans. Bwipo there. Mikyx in the midst of it all. Rekkles still full HP. The Fate's Core used. Hans Summer able to survive it against the zombie Bwipo. Rekkles decides they're going to give up the third inhibitor. He's clearing out the waves as they push towards those Nexus towers.
Will be able to get Hylissang.
Alphari jumps in. Hylissang down now. Alphari turns it back around. Mikyx is still alive in the midst of it all. Hans Summer goes legendary. The first Nexus tower goes down. And Misfits have put all of their eggs in the Hans Summer basket. They put their faith in Kalista, and that faith paid off. It's 1-1.
Misfits come back with an answer in game 2. And that answer is get a bunch of kills in the first 5 minutes of the game. 6-1 was the scoreline at 5 minutes. And that is ideally how you'd want to start if you are an early game focused team like Misfits.
Yeah, the Fnatic coaching staff, they have to tell their players, guys, we're drafting you fantastic late game team fights. Double scaling carries for Caps and Rekkles, the best carry setup we have in Europe. You don't need to overforce. But this whole thing, the gank from Broxah made sense in the early game if people remember it, because Kindred was just farming. He's like, we know they need to snowball on the bottom side. Early gank, try and get Rekkles ahead. Misfits run out of options. But when that backfires, when they didn't get Mikyx down in time and they had to only focus the support plus the TP from Alphari, the first 2 kills for Ansama were huge. And then the game just exploded and everyone just kept fighting.
But this is the second time now we've seen that from Fnatic. And when you speak to teams about their experiences playing against Fnatic in scrims, these guys are very aggressive and they're very proactive. And a lot of these games are decided very early on. And if they want to continue playing this scaling style, they either need to rein it back or shift their draft priorities.
The question is, do they shift their draft priorities? Do they bring in a sub to rein it all back? We'll have to find out. But to get more insight on that game, we're going to head over to our analysts.
Thank you very much, Medic. That's a lot to unpack again in game 2. I love that point from Vedius. You know, do they have to scale back on those late game scaling champions? What do they have to work with? So let's first look at what Misfits brought to the table. They said, you know, Hans Summer, we trust in you. We think you can do this, so we're going to build everything around this. Now tell me, how much of this is pre-planned and how much of this is a snowball just going out of control?
I mean, the pre-plan is gank bot lane, look for a fight down here, but the snowball going out of control is just off of a few mistakes from Fnatic. First, they don't go forward to actually get the kill onto Hans Summer, then Hylissang is trying to hold that wave, and they just end up getting punished and feeding this carry for Misfits.
And honestly, for me, most of it was just disrespectful from Fnatic. Like, you play scaling jungle, you play scaling mid lane, you play scaling ADC, and most of the early game fights were actually engaged by Fnatic. So, I mean, surely Fnatic came into this game and be like, we want to show them how it's played, but they were just not playing at all to their conditions.
It looked like insanity.
And the thing is, it worked for them in game 1, where they still had a relatively scaling comp but forced a lot of fights, and it actually paid off. But Misfits brought their A game in this one. After just getting a few kills in the bottom lane, they really just knew how to snowball that to create a big advantage.
Yeah, I agree. It's always two sides to a story, and Misfits are typically very good in the early game. When they're able to get a bit of advantages, they're able to push that very heavily. How much then came down to the composition they drafted for themselves? They had the Lulu in the middle lane. They had the Kalista for Hans Summer again.
So I actually really really like the Lulu in the mid lane because it just totally enabled their jungler Kold.
So we asked them beforehand, you know, do you go more towards the later scaling that Fnatic's bringing, or are you going even harder on the early game? And they actually managed to go even harder on the early game. And that's what I liked about it. They are playing to their strengths, not necessarily trying to match Fnatic at what they're good at. So they bring in the Kindred and the Lulu, who is honestly some of the strongest 2v2 in the early game. And then they play around this, and then at the same time, Fnatic is doing a lot of mistakes around the bottom side. So it looked like an easy game from Misfits side in the early game, but a lot of it is due to Fnatic.
And also they have they wanted supportive picks for Hansam, right? That's why you have Lulu in the mid lane. That's why they had Ivern in game 1. Kindred also can keep your AD carry alive, so I think that having a little bit of utility, but also the ability to actually just take the early game into his own control really enabled Maxlore in this one.
When we then look at the game, they were up 5k gold very, very quickly. What do you do if you're Fnatic or if you're any other team in that position to keep the game somewhat in a position that you could take it back?
Yeah, so I thought Fnatic actually handled it pretty well, where when you fall behind, the best thing you can do, especially with the scaling team comp, is just trade objectives. And in this case, they actually sent, you know, a lot of pressure up top side when Hansam was taking turrets bottom. They got a Rift Herald, which turned into a couple of early turrets, and they maintained that 5k gold lead for a good while. It didn't snowball out of control, and they wanted to scale, but that's when Misfits really turned it on.
That's true. There was one fight, though, where we thought, oh, dear God, if Misfits lose this game, that is surely curtains. But this was luckily the only resistance that Fnatic was able to.
Not gonna lie, for a second I was a little bit scared for Misfits, because they not only were they like continuously trading objectives, they were trading towers, they were giving Fnatic a way back in the game, but they were also taking bad fights. And one of the bad fights we see right here, where Fnatic actually comes out on top, even though they are really far behind.
Yeah, and Misfits very easily could have just threatened with Mikyx, not actually gone in and then gotten a tower, but they overcommitted, then the flank came in, which really cost them a lot, and put them in a position where we're like, oh no, they might actually lose this game. And if you lose this game after a lead like that, your second game,
it's over.
Mental boom.
Yeah.
And I like that you bring up Mikyx, because in this game specifically, we really saw him play super aggressive. Like he in this case, obviously a little bit too aggressive, flashing in when he shouldn't have, but he was playing with no fear, super fearless. He took the initiative and actually forced all the fights. So a lot of props to him. I think he had a fantastic game. So
and that's something I really like actually out of the Misfits drafts. 2 games in a row, they've gone for the first rotation Kalista Alistar, which just enables Mikyx to make these crazy plays, because he has his own ultimate to keep him alive. He has the Kalista callback to keep him alive. So it just lets him go really deep.
And it also puts the agency into the hands of that bottom lane, who you really want to see perform when it comes down to Misfits. I want to take a look at the final moments of the game where Misfits secured Baron. They bounced back. They were able to pick off Caps here, who unfortunately
yeah, it was so good because they waited in this bush for so long. The second Caps goes in, he's dead. He almost trades it back, which could have changed things up, but of course Misfits turned that into the Baron that would eventually win them the game.
Pretty easy Baron for them there. I don't like the term free, but you know, it was very hard for Fnatic to contest it at this point in time, because even though they won a fight, they were still very much ahead. We also see that in the post-game breakdown, it was really difficult for Fnatic to bounce back.
And one thing I want to point out, in the quarterfinals, when we saw Misfit in the mid-game, they were actually very slow at utilizing their lead. But in this case, they found the pick, they found the Baron, and at 20 minutes, with a composition like this, when you get the Baron, this is actually how you can snowball the game and win the game when you have the lead. So props to them for actually executing in the mid-game.
Definitely so. We saw Rekkles there. It was his game 1, but Hansama said, you are not going to run away with the spotlight like you did in Copenhagen. I am going to show you what we are made of. He picked a Kalista again in game 2, and this time he's able to really put his stamp on the game, goes legendary, and carries Misfits to game.
It was so good, and this is exactly what you need out of the Kalista pick. Early kills, early snowball, transition that into towers, insane objective control to come away with the win.
Great stuff from that. Let's take a look at our keys to victory after 2 games. Let's start with Fnatic and see what we said they should do. One of the first keys to victory for Fnatic was slow down Misfits' early pressure. Well, decidedly in game 2, that was not successful. So is this also what they should be looking at going into the next game?
I mean, it is kind of hard to slow down the game if you're just throwing out gifts left and right, free kills left and right.
It's also pretty hard to enable your star players when their opponents have like 18 kills.
Yeah, so what I would like to see from Fnatic is slow down a bit. I think they have the staff and they have the overall experience.
I'm just going to jump in because you say they have the staff. They are putting in Soaz for Bwipo in the top lane.
The experience.
Yeah, the experience. I think that's that. Is there anything else to that? Has Bwipo underperformed for you guys?
I think Bwipo has been a little bit aggressive even back in that game 1, but I really don't see a huge difference between the two players when they're playing champions like Ornn and Sion and all these tanks. So really what Soaz is going to bring is that outside perspective to say, in the last game, he's with the coaches. They pointed out exactly what went wrong. Now he's there to sort of level their mental and make sure they don't go too over-aggressive early on.
We'll see what Soaz brings. Bwipo is taking a backseat for the next game. I'd like to also go over the keys to victory we had before the series for Misfits, since they were able to fight themselves back into the game. Don't die mid. Well, they killed people mid.
Well, and also Sencux, 0 deaths in that game, so definitely checked that one off. And of course, pick a winning bot lane matchup. Kalista, Alistar. Insane down there in the bottom lane, and it's worked so well for them.
So do we want to add anything for each team?
I think we have seen the teams have 1 win each, and with both of them, they played to their conditions, the keys that they should win on. So the question is now, do you want to adapt, or do you just go into the next game and tell your players from Fnatic side, you know, slow down a bit, play to your win conditions, and actually execute what you have in front of you?
Well, let me ask you guys the question. Vedius brought it up before. He said maybe I want to see Fnatic go away from those scaling picks. What do you guys think? If you were the coach, would you try something different?
I actually don't think I would. Maybe I actually think no. I think you go with it again. I'm like trying to do these like mental gymnastics right now. Go back. No, I think it works for them. They just don't need to make all those fights happen in the early game. That's crazy.
I would change one thing, and that would be putting caps on a more aggressive early game champion to kind of compensate for what Rekkles is bringing, because we see him once again go for the Tristana. I don't think this will change. I think if you want to change something from Fnatic side is stronger mid and jungle that can kind of slow down the pace, and then you have something to play for instead of trying to battle it out in the bottom side when we know that Hansama and Mikyx will play the stronger laning phase. So I think that's where I would
well, overall, we've seen tons of kills, so I am definitely
Misfits just
entertained.
do the same.
Yeah, Misfits do the same.
I love
We're
it.
entertained. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know what that means. We've got a series on our hands. Actually, quite literally, I have a series on my hands, as Fnatic and Misfits are dead even after 2 games. Find out who takes the lead when we return.
Teleport coming in behind them, but Fnatic are going to answer with one of their own. Rekkles is done! Hansama gets first blood, and here comes Alphari. Teleport cancelled by Bwipo. Incredible stuff for Misfits. They get their bot lane ahead. Be the bouncer for his mid laner, because Hylissang is coming in. The knock up onto Mikyx. Sencux has the wild growth. He flashed in the wrong direction, and now Rekkles has been turned around on Guardian. The shield is not enough for Fnatic.
And a massive goal lead for Misfits. Hylissang will find Maxlore.
Hylissang, don't do it, Hylissang.
Oh! Fnatic win the game, it's done. At the moment for
no,
Hansama. Broxah, no flash. Sencux there, Maxlore on the chase. Broxah's going to try and get away the ignite. Final shot! There's bombs coming out from Caps as well, because one big one hitting onto someone can just chop. Oh, he went in! Yeah, just turns it back onto Caps, he's done! Hansama goes legendary, the burst Nexus tower goes down, and Misfits have put all of their eggs in the Hansama basket. They put their faith in Kalista, and that faith paid off. It's 1-1.